Another case of the NYPD racial profiling. This time, a paid informant is coming forward describing how he was instructed by police to, quote, bait Muslims to talk about jihad and terrorism. This was done while he says he infiltrated the Muslim community, going to mosques and study groups and snapping photos, many of them of innocent people. The informant, 19-year-old Shamyar Rahman, says he was paid around $1,000 a month for his undercover work. He was also facing minor marijuana charges, and police said his work would make his future brighter. But Rahman is now speaking out, saying his role as an informant is, quote, detrimental to the Constitution. For more on the NYPD using informants to trap Muslims, I was joined earlier by Cyrus McGoldrick, care rep for the New York Council on American Islamic Relations. I asked him if this is an example of blatant racial profiling on the part of the NYPD.
Shocking, yet not so shocking. Unfortunately, this is just one more revelation in a whole string of them led by the Associated Press. Somewhat amused that it took Shamyar Rahman about 8 months to figure out what we've known for years, was that the surveillance was producing absolutely no leads, that it had no value, and that it was extremely illegal and a violation of community trust. As upset as we are, we have to at least look at the bright side. At least he came out, unlike the many people who are still undercover and are still providing, useless information to the police.
All right. Rahman says that he was told to, quote, bait Muslims. So, I mean, what do you think? Is this provoking them to do something they otherwise wouldn't do? Or is it catching the guys that were at risk of committing terrorist acts?
Well, it certainly fits the trend at first glance, a trend where almost 100% of these so-called domestic terrorist plots were really invented by informants or undercover agents and leading people into these types of crimes. Just last week, there was a young boy arrested down by the Federal Reserve for allegedly plotting to blow it up, and apparently it was an FBI informant dragging him along the whole time. But then also, I noticed something in the article today that was especially disturbing, and that he was really recording not just to get people in plots and plans, but to just get people to say something that was somehow inflammatory or was that somehow controversial, and that speech was enough for the NYPD to keep tabs on. That, for me, is a whole new level of totalitarianism and something that we should all be conscious of.
I think that word that he uses, bait, when you use that description, is very fitting, that you're almost provoking them to say something, and then once you've baited them, they've then become a suspect. I do want to bring up what the NYPD is saying, but they actually aren't saying very much. The NYPD spokesman, Paul Brown, didn't immediately return a message seeking comment on this case, but he has denied widespread NYPD spying, saying police only follow leads. Do you buy that?
I'm impressed that you even still ask Paul Brown to remark on these things. They've been denying this from day one. Unfortunately, the documents, the NYPD documents themselves that the Associated Press has included in their reports and that they're basing their reports on, makes it very clear what the NYPD is all about. It's about racial profiling, religious profiling, ethnic profiling, national profiling. It really just goes right to the heart of everything that's wrong. And so you don't have to listen to us. You don't have to listen to the police. You can go right to the NYPD documents yourselves. I encourage you to look at the Associated Press website on the subject, to look at the documents. There's no defense of the NYPD unless you ignore these documents entirely. And so it's really important that we know the facts, that we know what our government's doing. We are blessed to have a few media outlets left that are still telling the truth and are still willing to ask the tough questions. And find the facts for yourselves, and let's really redouble our efforts to reform, to make sure that we're really making change, that we're turning this energy and these really bad stories, these really negative stories, into something concrete, into some real justice.
All right. Do want to bring up this other point regarding racial profiling. This informant here, Rahman, is now coming forward saying he doesn't want to be part of this operation. He says that it's, quote, detrimental to the Constitution. What do you think about that? Not only is it not ethical, but is it also, in your opinion, is it unconstitutional?
I think so. You know, I'm not an attorney, and so I like to think of these things in terms of right and wrong. But yeah, I agree. This is absolutely unconstitutional. This is a violation of this idea that the government should not be, establishing religion, and it should not be targeting religions. That's absolutely vital. And so if we lose that, neither myself nor Shamir Rahman or any constitutional experts, but I think it is important we know that this is a tremendous violation. This is a violation of the contract that we have with this government, the trust that we're trying to build up here. You know, for the NYPD, which is for 10, 11 years, despite the real facts on the ground, despite, police raids, despite mass surveillance, entrapment cases, is now trying to outreach to our community and come and offer photo ops to community leaders, even going so far as to erect this puppet show Muslim Advisory Council in the NYPD. And then on the other hand, to be paying people like this kid who are criminals essentially, are paying them to then collect intelligence on each other is a real shame and something that we should really push back against hard.
All right. And, we have seen, or it seems like there is this rise of Islamophobia in this post 9/11 era that we live in. And when you see programs like this, the NYPD carrying out programs like this, do you think that it's feeding in to this anti-Islamic sentiment?
I think so. I don't like, essentializing Islamophobia as a post 9/11 thing, because honestly, it's really only an escalation from, the Islamophobia and Hinduphobia and, just general racism of the 90s and before. You see, Muslims are the target now, but before us, it was another group, and after us, it'll probably be another group. And so it's important. I appreciate what you say, that this is a cycle. What this does is it feeds into this hate, it feeds into a cycle of fear, a cycle of war. The more that you can entrap these young men, the more that you can manufacture crimes, especially where there are no crimes, it not only allows the police and the FBI to justify their budget, and of course we have to follow the money, but at the same time, it's feeding into this fear, it's justifying wars abroad, and we really need to see, the real urgency of this. It's not just about one person, it's not just about one boy, and unfortunately it's about a lot more because it's one per week. But at the same time, we need to see this in the context of the broader war, which, while they call it a war on terror, has really become a war of terror.
All right, Cyrus, thank you so much for joining us and weighing in on this really important topic. That was Cyrus McGoldrick, Care Rep for the New York Council on American Islamic Relations.